So yesterday we spent some time talking about Frank Reich, his press conference, how things don't look like they're developing for Bryce Young. And
shouts to the people on Twitter who are like, are those real answers or are those like AI answers that he's punched in thinking this is what a coach is supposed to say?
I mean, it's entirely possible that he's a deep fake. I don't know.
No, we see him in person.
Have we?
On the sideline.
Are we sure that's not a stunt double for the man? So it's funny.
We already had our dark web segment.
Here's for instance, here's Mr. Marshall, who went on social media and pointed this out. Forget presidential aging. Let's talk about Panthers head coach aging. Like, this is the Tepper effect. Look at that man. Here's the question. Was he dyeing his hair without us knowing? He could have been painting his head.
No, I will say this as someone who has some of these issues. When you put product in your hair, it does make your hair look darker.
Oh, okay.
So what happened here on the left is he got a haircut and he put product in it to keep it in place.
I see.
Which makes it look darker. On the right.
So that's not David Tepper?
No. Well, his face, though. Boy, there is some Walter White energy going on there. My gosh. Oh, look at Brooke Pryor.
No, she's there. We're going to get to Brooke here in a second. But I wanted to get to a report from Diana Rossini.
Okay.
So Diana Rossini, she used to be over at ESPN. She's at The Athletic. And this is where NFL insiders at times are doing work for agents and coaches.
Sure.
Okay. And that was my immediate takeaway from Diana Rossini's tweet back on November 13th. She tweeted out, Frank Reich and staff are going to try hard to get this Carolina offense off the ground. The Panthers have smart coaches who can figure this out. But let's say they can't. Let's just say they can't. You know who knows how to coach the very best version of Bryce Young? New England's Bill O'Brien. Now, I thought Bill O'Brien was brought to New England to be the Alabama quarterback whisperer.
That's right.
But it turns out that he's not whispering at Mac Jones. He's literally yelling in his face about end-of-game situations and terrible throws. And, of course, she had a link to an Alabama story about how Bryce Young credits Bill O'Brien for a lot of his success, of course.
Sure.
This is how the NFL insider sausage is made.
Yes,
okay. But I will say this about Diana Rossini, because she was on the Athletics football show with Robert Mays and Josh Norris at Underdog Fantasy, who used to be a big Panthers coverage guy at Black and Blue Review, had clipped this from the show, which I think, all jokes about Rossini and insider information and kind of promoting Bill O'Brien aside, I do think that this is a problem for Frank Reich.
I don't think this is a situation like where we are seeing in Atlanta, where the Athletic just reported that it seems that Arthur Smith is safe here and ownership is supporting what they're trying to develop into. In Carolina, the sense I'm getting there and from having multiple conversations is that there's frustration with the way this offense is performing, the development of Bryce Young, the overall effort and energy from the players and from the coaches, the way the sideline looks during the game. I had one person say or describe it to me as looking lifeless. So these are all parts of this team that ownership has seen themselves. They're looking at it. They're discussing it. They're having conversations about whether or not they feel that Frank Reich is the right guy as a head coach to get the best out of Bryce Young. So I think in terms of a leash right now, I think it's a short one for the future of this coaching staff, because what they thought this would look like, what they thought this would be with all these different assistants, with all these different backgrounds and philosophies, what they were hoping for this to look like versus the reality of it, it's just too far apart. And I think the only way this staff can keep their jobs by the end of this year will be if there's significant improvement. And we'll just have to see if they're going to be able to put this together.
It's a wrap. I said yesterday it's a wrap for Frank Reich, because it's very clear that he's trying to coach the team he wants rather than the team that he has. That's always a red flag for me when it comes to coaches and just how good of a coach you might be at the professional level. The fact that Diana Rossini is hearing from the building that there has to be, quote unquote, significant improvement, which is a very subjective thing to say, tells me that the wheels are already in motion. It's kind of like what's going on with Sean McDermott in Buffalo, by the way. They fired Ken Dorsey as the offensive coordinator yesterday. That tells me that Sean McDermott knows his job is on the line. Fun fact, because the Buffalo Bills are literally the Carolina Panthers North. Do you know who the interim OC is?
The Wonder Boy.
Joe Brady, interim OC up in Buffalo. So this is crunch time for a lot of coaching staffs. And the fact that this is already out there for Frank Reich tells me it's done. They're going to be moving on from Frank Reich. And he hasn't done anything to really give you an indication that is somebody you can believe in. And maybe they're going to get to these conclusions sooner, which I have no problems with. If you know the Frank Reich thing is done, much like we knew the Matt Rule stuff was done, don't waste people's time.
Sure.
Especially when you have a young quarterback that you cannot sink his development further. I said this yesterday. The biggest benefit for Trevor Lawrence in year one for people to get over the whole, is he a bust, was he was literally coached by Urban Meyer. Now, am I kind of dogging Frank Reich by comparing him to Urban Meyer?
A little bit.
A little bit. But my point stands. If this is not the right development for your quarterback, you have to punt now before you do further damage, and go get yourself a young coach that's going to run a dynamic offense, which is where things are headed, for heaven's sake, and see where you go. And obviously get the right pieces too, which is why I think Scott Fitterer is also on the hot seat. And then you might just get a complete
re-rack,
like a re-rack, another re-rack, which they should have done in the first place, where you have a head coach and a GM that are on the same page. Of course, David Tepper also has to learn and be on the same page as well. All right. I texted you last night and I said, so a little bit of a homework assignment because you're plugged in. Diana Orsini's talking about Bill O'Brien, like just throwing that name out there. You just don't throw that name out there for all willy-nilly. So what might be going on at Bank of America Stadium these days?
I agree with your initial assessment. If you can hear a ball squeak, that's because Hootie is next to me. He has thoughts also on Bill O'Brien. I think that, yes, part of it is probably an agent, French, whatever. There's some kind of behind the scenes, the sausage part, the sausage being made part of the insiders and floating a name like that out there. There is, however, the fact she linked to that AL.com story that talked about Bryce Young being his best version under Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien was obviously with him in Alabama. Okay, I can kind of connect the dots there. I see where she's going. And then you couple that with what she said on the Athletic podcast about how bad things are behind the scenes, or how dire things are behind the scenes. And yeah, it makes sense. However, I am not touching any coach that has ever been an offensive coordinator or in that role for the New England Patriots right now. They feel so incredibly radioactive.
Yes.
And if I'm sitting here saying, gosh, you know what I need to do is just, hit the detonate button, reset my organization. Who do I want to bring in? No one from New England. How has that gone in any case recently? Not well. So when I look at, and you know what, maybe I don't know Bryce Young. I don't know what motivates him. Maybe he enjoys being screamed at on the sideline. Maybe that's the thing that makes him want to play better. It wouldn't to me. And I don't know that is the answer. I don't know that it doesn't always match up, the college coordinator to the quarterback in the NFL. I mean, shoot, sorry to invoke Matt Canada. He worked. Okay, great. Well, then I'll just go ahead and dip my toe in now. Matt Canada worked with Kenny Pickett in college, right? Like that was supposed to be part of the whole, like, oh, Kenny's going to be better this year. Like they're going to pick right up where they left off last year. Matt has him another year. Everything's going to be awesome because like Matt's familiar with him. He recruited him at Pitt. They worked together. What did that have to do? Like that, what did that get you? One of the lowest offensive outputs in the NFL. Like it's just because it worked one time does not mean it's going to work again. And yes, Bill O'Brien has obviously more NFL experience than Matt Canada in this example, but I would prefer to pair Bryce Young with an innovative offensive thinker, with someone that is looking at, to your points of coach his skill set, coach the team you have, not the team you want. Mm-hmm. Somebody that can take him to the next level and not coach what he has been in the past.